This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the OTAs and off-season period has officially started. The Browns are actually doing something that kind of resembles practicing football. We saw videos where the Browns had Deshaun Watson throwing the ball out there to some of his wide receivers. So I wanted to talk about some guys on this team who are a bit on the bubble right now when it comes to their ability to make this team. And the first guy I'm going to start with is Nick Harris, because he plays center. They re-signed Ethan Pocic, which is more of an indictment on him than it is anybody else, which means they're not at the point where they can trust him to start or stay healthy to start. He's coming off of a nasty knee injury. And look, most ACL tears are pretty nasty, but this was an especially nasty one where he had, like, I think almost all of his ligaments torn at one point, like something crazy like that. So they're not sure how he's going to be able to come back coming off an ACL injury. They already have signed a starter, and then they drafted Luke Whippler as a backup behind him. And it just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to hold his spot, because one, Luke Whippler can come in and be a better center than him. That's possible. He was a really good center at Ohio State. He has better height, size, and athletic metrics than Nick Harris did coming out of Washington. Understand Nick Harris was a 5th-round pick and Luke Whippler was a 6th-round pick, but Luke Whippler was thought highly of in his draft class. He just fell for whatever reason. That's not the same for Nick Harris. I really struggle to see the avenue in which Nick Harris makes the team, right? Because also with Luke Whippler, if he's not the backup center, or if he's going to be the backup center, he can also be a backup guard, because while he's not super long, he's 6'2", you could throw him in there. Nick Harris is 6 foot and he's undersized. You can't put him at guard. We saw what happened in 2020 when the Browns put him at guard in an emergency situation. He was awful once teams adjusted to him. He was not big enough, not tall enough, not strong enough to play that position. So he has no versatility. He's really only useful for you if he's your starting center. As a backup center, since that he has that lack of versatility, he really isn't that useful to you. So I don't know what you do with that, right? He's definitely going to be on the bubble. I really don't know if there's a lane for him to make the team, especially since he's in the last year of his rookie deal. I struggle to see where it is that he can make this happen for himself. The next player I'm going to talk about who's less on the bubble than Nick Harris is James Hudson, because that tackle room is starting to get really, really crowded when you look at the amount of bodies and guys that the Browns have under contract in that room, right? You go Jed Wills on a 5th-year option. You got DeJuan Jones. They just brought back Jack Conklin. So what does that say about how they feel about James Hudson, right? They brought back Jack Conklin and they drafted DeJuan Jones. Both those guys play right tackle. That's where James Hudson was projected to be at. And if you don't feel good enough about him starting at right tackle anytime soon, you definitely aren't going to feel good about flipping him to left tackle. So what's the future for James Hudson? It's starting to get very gray. He did a good job as tackle eligible last year, and I thought he did an all right job when he had to step in at right tackle for an injured Jack Conklin through points of the year, but they're not impressed enough to where they're going to commit fully to him. As I said before, they just drafted a guy at that position who's a very good prospect. I mean, he's almost in a similar situation to Nick Harris, not as extreme, but in a very similar situation. And then they also have a starter on top that they just paid. And I know there was this theory that he was going to flip the left and they were going to not give Jed his 5th-year option, and that was going to be the solution. But they gave Jed his 5th-year option. Jed's going to be here for the next 2 years at left tackle. Jack Conklin's going to be here the next 2 years at right tackle. And once Jack's not ready to play anymore, they're pretty obviously going to switch to Dawand Jones, who they drafted very early in the 4th round of this draft, in a position where they're going to want him to play. So I just don't know what the future is for James. Maybe he could be the swing tackle, right? Maybe they feel like his future is as a swing tackle and not as a starter on this offense. And he does have that lane because he is versatile enough to play both sides and play a little guard. He has the size to do it. But that's going to be his future. And one, I don't know if that's what he wants his future to be. I'm pretty sure James wants to start somewhere. I don't think that opportunity is going to be coming soon here in Cleveland. So for James, I think this is close to being his last season here. If not, he might not even get this season because they decide to move on from him because the team needs a tackle or wants a young tackle prospect, and they're willing to give up something small to get James Hudson there. But he's another player I think is on the bubble. Another guy, Demetric Felton. He has an opportunity, right? Unlike Nick Harris and unlike James Hudson, to where the last 2 positions we talked about, 2 players we talked about, those are guys who don't really have a lane to get any playing time. With Demetric Felton, it's different. He absolutely has a lane to get some playing time. The question about him is he going to be able to fill it? And the lane for him to get playing time is obvious. It's third down back. I mean, this was what he was drafted to be, was a third down back, right? A good receiver out the backfield, a fine enough pass protector, and somebody who could be an extra kind of gadgety weapon for you. And that was what they wanted him to do in 2021 when they drafted him. But as the years has gone by, he has not fulfilled that role. And honestly, he's been more disappointing than exciting, especially since he showed all the excitement at the beginning of his career. So Demetric is somebody who's now trying to hang on and be that third down running back. The role is there, but again, can Demetric fulfill it? He struggled the last 2 years, to say the least. They moved on to wide receiver last year. He barely got any play. Now he's back at running back, or he's probably going to be back at running back since the room's thin. You don't want Nick Chubb out there 100% of the snaps. You want him 85. So the requirement for the running back that's going to be behind him is much less. But do you want that to be somebody like Demetric Felton, or do you want it to be Jerome Ford? And even then, in that third down back conversation, yes, is Demetric Felton a better route runner than Jerome Ford? Yes. Does that matter that much though for a third down running back? I don't know if it does, right? Unless you are Christian McCaffrey and you are a extremely capable runner and an extremely capable route runner, the route running abilities of your running back are very overrated. Right. I mean, we did this with Duke Johnson. We've done this with every great route running back that can't really run the ball. Football requires its running backs to be able to run. So that's the biggest issue with Demetric Felton. He can run a route. He can catch a football, but he's not a wide receiver. He's a running back, and he can't run the ball as a running back. So he's useless as a running back. And that's been an issue for him. Jerome Ford, they feel like could be more useful as a running back, and he's a good enough route runner to get away with certain things, and he can be a good enough blocker. So I just think that Demetric Felton is in a tough spot this offseason. He has an opportunity to make an impact and to get a role on this team, which he has not had in the last couple of years, but his ability to take that position, I just think it's diminished at this point. Another guy who is going to have a little bit of an issue here is Jakeem Grant. He is somebody that I think got a really bad rap, or a really bad luck, because he was in a position to be the guy, right? To be the kick returner, to be the punt returner, to be the gadget guy, to be, you know, the end around guy. Like, there was a real role carved out for him last year where he would have got serious touches, because the only home run hitters that we had in this offense, when I say home run hitters, I'm referring to guys who can get you plus 20 balls, were Anthony Schwartz and him. And then he tore his Achilles, and there's just the math on it. What, Jakeem's not super young. I believe he's close to 30, if not 30 years old. An Achilles tear at that age for a speed and quickness reliant player, the numbers aren't good on that guy's ability to come back and have the same burst athletically. He's not a big guy. He's a really, really small guy. So if he doesn't have the same burst athletically, is he able to maintain his ability to be an NFL wide receiver? It's a real question, especially when it comes to kick and punt return. Now, the good news for him is that nobody has really taken the kick and punt return spot, but the Browns weren't abysmal in that area last year. They were fine, but not great. They were fine. So it's not like there's a big need for Jakeem. Also, when you talk about the end around guy or the speed guy or the home run hitter, the Browns have thoroughly addressed those needs in the offseason. So they brought in Elijah Moore. They brought in Marquise Goodwin. They pretty much have everybody to do all of those things that you had the opportunity to do last year. They brought in better candidates to do it than you. And they're also not coming off an Achilles tear. So it just doesn't make a ton of sense for him to make this team, or for him to really have a big spot on the team. So those are the four guys that I just don't see a future with on this team. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.